Mercedes-Benz is legendary for its innovation, its technology, its driving pleasure, and just about everything else. When you think about luxury cars, that's the name that comes to your mind. Not everybody wants to spend that $100,000, $200,000 on a brand new Mercedes. Instead, I've got a list of 6 of the most amazing late model Mercedes-Benz that you can buy, maybe slightly out of warranty, not very problematic, extremely enjoyable to drive, and I even bought one too. Let's get into it now. Life's too short to drive boring cars. A lot of luxury car shoppers don't necessarily want to spend all that money on a brand new vehicle, and shopping for a vehicle that has 3 or 4 or 5 years under the belt represents massive value. That's why, in fact, the first vehicle on my list is the Mercedes GLC, and we're talking about from 2016 to about 2024. Now, the beauty with the GLC is the fact that you can buy it just outside of warranty, possibly buy yourself a 2022, 2021. Warranty's gone, sure, but depreciation is absolutely in your favor. That's why you can get a 5-year vehicle from Mercedes-Benz that literally loses half of its original value. According to iSeeCars.com, they retain only about 52% of their original value, means it's a huge bargain for you as a used car shopper. Now, there's some things to consider, of course. They have a base 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine. You can also step it up to an M276, my absolute favorite, which is the GLC 43. And as well, you can step up to an AMG 4-liter twin-turbo V8 with a wonderful 9-speed automatic transmission bolted to any of these particular drivetrains. That 2-liter, you have to understand, it's built or essentially designed by Renault, and I try to think about any good cars that came out of France. Yeah, I can't think of any either. However, that's okay. It's still a relatively decent engine. It's economical with 240 horsepower plus, and now, of course, with the late models having a mild hybrid, it is chock full of technology, but it's still a fairly simple vehicle to maintain. Now, that doesn't mean it comes without its few problems. Of course, you're shaving half of the value of that car means you're saving a massive amount of money, but put some of that cash away because there are some potential issues. The PCV valve. We also had an issue with our vehicle. The positive crankcase ventilation valve is a well-known issue. Now, the beauty is, in some of these models, you actually do get them extended on a 10-year additional warranty. Mercedes-Benz recognized that was a problem, and they are going to change that out on their dime if it happens to crap out a check engine light. That being said, there's other problems too. Brake wear sensor issues, the airmatic system as well, potentially fail on certain models only. Most of them don't even have that. Some other minor electrical faults and gremlins could pop up as well. Might be faults, lights, backup cameras. It could even be related to sensors telling you that maybe your right signal's on or your detection system's not working. There's always seems to be some sort of a fault-related gremlin associated with some of these cars. Now, a lot of times it's tied directly to low battery voltage, so always keeping your battery fully charged and healthy is definitely going to go a long way as well. I've also noticed that there's squeaks and rattles with some of these cars once they get up there in that 60, 70, 80,000 mile range, or 6 or 7 years and older. Those are just cosmetic issues. Generally speaking, this is a fairly dependable car and huge bang for the buck. The next one is actually a car I bought. Ours is a 2018 and we love it. We've had a few problems and I want to share some of those issues with you, however, but it does feature a baseline C300, which of course is an M264 or an M260. The internal designation of these cars is a W205, like the one we have, started in 2016 and went all the way up to about 2021. Anything newer than that is a facelift, essentially W206. Same engine, similar gearbox, the 9G-tronic, but now it has a mild hybrid associated with it. The car looks virtually the same, but there have been some mild enhancements and improvements in the way of reliability. Now, the beauty is buying one of these C-Class cars, you're able to save as much as 55 to 60% of its value gets wiped away in the first 5 years. That's a huge win for you. Sure, you may not have warranty after 5 years, but you're going to put tens of thousands of dollars away in the pocket just in case for a rainy day. Not only can you go with the base 2-liter like we have, the C300, you can step up to an AMG fire-breathing beast, 4-liter twin-turbo V8 with the AMG speed shift, but most importantly, the model I would buy, and I can't express this enough, is the C43 AMG. It's essentially an AMG Light, like BMW does with a lot of their cars, and they call it M Light. This is the AMG Light. The C43 offers a 3-liter twin-turbo V6 designated the M276. Absolutely marvelous engine, beautiful drivetrain, sounds wonderful, has immense performance, and goes head-to-head directly with BMW's B58. It's fairly reliable. There have been some notable issues with timing chains, or as well, sometimes a little bit of extra carbon fouling. That said, it is an absolute gem of an engine, also made it up to the 9-speed auto, but now you can also get the all-wheel drive, so it just makes more sense than going all in with the twin-turbo 4-liter. Now, some problems associated with this car, and I can speak exactly from experience, as I've owned the car now just about 5 years. The PCV, the positive crankcase ventilation, it crapped out a fault, and naturally we had to take it into the dealer. Now, unfortunately, because it's a longitudinal mounted engine, that means it runs front to back, means it's a very convoluted arrangement to try to get that PCV out there. There's hoses and fittings and material that you have to get out of the way. I believe there was even a motor mount that had to get moved. The engine had to be cradled, and there was a lot of messing around just to get that replaced. But fortunately, it was done on the extended 10-year warranty. Glitches, alarms, gremlins are related to some of these systems. Not check engine lights, not even service lights, but weird lights related to some of the ADAS systems, of course, which are lights and protection systems, and it spits out these codes randomly. Now, we've had issues, of course. It did get washed under the hood once, and it seems as though we've had problems ever since. So they are fragile and sensitive to putting water under the hood. Never ever shampoo your engine. But with that said, other than squeaks and rattles and a little bit of peculiar noise from the front end, not exactly sure what it is, the vehicle has been relatively durable. It doesn't feel like it's bolted together with the most care and attention. It runs, it's great on fuel, it's peppy, it's nice to drive, the transmission shifts quickly, and with a variety of different driving modes, it's actually kind of fun to drive too. So we love the way it looks, we love the way it drives, it's great and economical, and I can even maintain a lot of it myself. Means it's a great for a DIYer. I can't express enough how much this vehicle is definitely a win. Do I have any regrets? You betcha. I personally would have switched up and gone directly to the C43 AMG Lite version because that now gives you the twin-turbo V6, and I think that's immensely better than the base French-derived engine. Now, the third one is a real gem, and I've always said this. I love the 5 Series BMW, and I love the E-Class Mercedes-Benz. And we're talking about the 2017 to 2024, the W213. Now, there are a variety of drivetrains stemming from a base 2-liter turbo N-Lines 4, and I wouldn't even bother with that. Honestly, too big of a car, too small of an engine. I don't even really love it in my car, but you know what? In the E-Class, it's just too much car to haul around. There is a 3-liter inline 6-cylinder engine, made it up as well to a mild hybrid. So I would suggest going the AMG E53S. Of course, you get the 6-cylinder, but even better, the AMG 63S, absolutely legendary. With the 4-liter twin-turbo V8, it is a rocket ship on rails, and 4 doors and a trunk. It's gorgeous, it's flaring and aggressive, and who doesn't want a car that looks like that? I love the M5s, and I love the E63S. They're both legends in their own time. But, you know, for those lucky duckies who actually happen to get diesels in certain markets, unfortunately, we can't get it in our market. If you can get it, get it. The diesels are fun too. They have a great passing torque, and they're very economical. That's something to consider as well. But depreciation works in your favor because according to iSeeCars.com, they lose about 57% of their original value in 5 years, means 43% of value retention means you could put thousands of dollars in your pocket. And remember, these are not cheap cars brand new. So I mean it literally, you're saving thousands of dollars. That's a huge win. Now, of course, it's a more complex car and it does come with complex big boy problems. Air suspension leaks, compressor leaks as part of that, and you'll notice the ass end sinking on the ground. It wants to drag its butt along, and that can cost you thousands of dollars. There's also been well-known issues with their infotainment, their command system, which is similar to what we have, but also the newer generation of the M-Box, which is improved. It's faster, it's quicker, it's more responsive, better graphics, but they've all had their glitches, so just be aware. But it seems to be a common issue with the vast majority of cars in the industry today. Too much technology just means more problems. If you're looking for lower cost service running costs and maintenance and repairs, you have to expect the GLC and the C-Class are going to be a little cheaper than the E-Class. The E-Class is more premium, as the S-Class, if you ever go up to that, that's going to be the banger dollars. You're going to expect big, expensive repairs when you start stepping into the S-Class cars. Now, another gem of a vehicle I would strongly consider. It's also known to be one of the slightly more problematic vehicles in the lineup, but because it's such a big, luxurious vehicle, and actually my neighbor has 2 of them. They have the earlier, lower trim level level, and they also have an AMG GLE 63S, which is, of course, their midsize SUV. It's big, cantankerous, lots of space and power and performance, and they really haven't had any issues with their car other than there was a screw up with the rear parking brake. There was a mess up somewhere at the dealer took it apart, didn't go back together again, and somehow some sort of actuator or module at the back burned out, and they had to order parts in and get it replaced. Outside of that, there have been some common issues, recalls related to the transmission not shifting down completely, and therefore the vehicle could stall. That being said, it's mostly a programming problem. Other issues some people have commented with some of the turbocharger whine, some whistling noise at the A-pillars. The bolsters of the seats don't wear particularly well, and some of the fabric has actually come apart for some owners. Outside of that, generally speaking, a fairly well put together car, very luxurious and beautiful to drive. But sadly, again, as always, with the more complex vehicles, just like the E-Class, the GLE is essentially the SUV version of that, means more sensor faults, airmatic system, of course, the compressor, and the vehicle, again, could be sitting on its rump because of some leak in the air system. Just means that that's a very expensive proposition. We had it in our X5 as well many years ago, and the airbags went, and it went twice on us, and each time the dealer wanted an exorbitant amount of money, but fortunately for me, I was able to DIY that, and I replaced those on my own dime. So it was a relatively easy fix, but it's an expensive one if you're going to the dealer. Now, the next model I'm going to combine into two, the GLA and the GLB, essentially on the same platform. Now, what they are is the subcompact SUVs. The GLA is a little sporty unit, it's a 5-seater, and it's a little sleeker. It looks a lot like a Porsche Macan, but smaller. As well, you can also get the GLB, which is a little more square, boxy, and upright. Now, I like those because you can get a third-row upgrade. And of course, these vehicles come with a featured 8-speed DCT, so that's vastly different than all of the other Benzes. That's right, double-clutch gearbox. That means there are some drivability concerns that a lot of people don't particularly love. 221 horsepower, 2-liter turbo 4. They're peppy, but they're primarily front-wheel drive. Now, you can also get an optional all-wheel drive for these. The GLA I like because of the looks, but I prefer the GLB for the practicality in the 3-row. It just makes a lot of sense for a lot of people. Now, that being said, they're primarily the same, and there are some issues. Turbocharger replacement, as much as $1,500. Mechatronics issue, anywhere from $2,000 to $4,000, can definitely break the bank. Like I said, you've got to have a few dollars in the bank, so where you're saving on some of the depreciation, you can win by simply having a few dollars parked away just for those rainy days. Suspension components, anywhere from $600 to $1,500 up to $2,000 if all of a sudden you've got ball joints or struts or any of those components start to wear on you. I would anticipate that once you hit 70 to 90,000 miles, you're going to start hearing a little looser front end. You might have the need to start replacing components. Tires and brakes, those are pretty typical, nothing extraordinary, and because these vehicles are relatively small and economical, they're not that expensive for a lot of the day-to-day parts. Some people have complained of ECU replacements or modules, a couple grand and above. Of course, jerkiness in the transmission is common. I've also heard about sunroofs not necessarily working properly or coming off the rails. There have been electrical gremlins, lots of those. Again, a lot of those little quirks and weird phenomenon that you just can't quite explain. You reboot and it seems to go away, or comes out randomly and you haven't done anything differently. It just makes you scratch your head. But in other words, it's not perfect, but for the cost, you could still buy the 3-pointed star and drive in the lap of luxury. Now, to know this, the GLB and the GLA are not all of that refined. So if you're expecting a GLE level of refinement and durability and that overall Mercedes-Benz feel, you're going to be disappointed because these vehicles, they're dual clutch, they're a little jerky, they're a little lurchy, and the vehicle suspension is a little harsher. It's going to feel a little sportier, but it's not going to feel quite as luxurious. But I personally like that because I like that edgy feeling, and it doesn't feel cheap, it just feels a little bit rough around the edges. Now, according to Edmunds and Kelley Blue Book, you're also expecting only maybe 40% value lost in 5 years. So you're going to pay a little bit more on the used car market. In other words, closer to 60% for a lot of these vehicles because they're fun and they're cheaper and easier to run. But the next vehicle shares the same amount of depreciation, and I personally love it. I love the slope back. I love the way it stands. I love the style, and we're talking about the CLA 250. That's right, the CLA series. You can also get a hot AMG version, but just for cheap and dirty, the CLA 250 is simple. 220 horsepower. It's fun. It's frivolous. You also get the dual clutch gearbox and a whole host of issues. From, again, as I mentioned, some jerkiness in the transmission, sunroof problems, electronical gremlins, and you know what? Generally speaking, a turbocharger can cost you a few dollars. But again, you buy one of these cars, you put 5 or 10 grand in the bank, and you can drive away in the lap of luxury. Enjoy these cars. They're late model. They look still great. They look modern. If you like a little bit of that technology without out the overload, as we're starting to see a lot of more of that tech overload now in 25, 26, probably into 27. Some of these vehicles go back to 2015, 16, 17. Technology overload was just starting, so these still feel modern without getting out of hand. Now, if these aren't convincing enough, you probably ask yourself, why do these cars lose so much money? Well, right there, I'm actually going to answer that question for you. Why used Mercedes-Benz are so cheap? There's actually some good reasons, and some of which you've probably never thought of. Hope to see each and every one of you real soon, everybody. We'll catch you then. Bye-bye.